and texture for our leather. In our previous lesson, we're able to work on this shiny metal piece that we have here. And so we're able to take and just kind of continue that with our thigh guards or plates or whatever these things are that protect her femoral arteries from arrow attack. And so what we'll do, just kind of go over this a little bit, is we just use the same technique for these little bands as we did for the metal. And so I just kind of highlighted a little bit and then went through with my smudge tool and just kind of smeared that around. And then the same as for our little plates here, just went through with some darks and lights, and then went through and streaked them out, and then used the line tool just to kind of highlight some of those little areas. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to work on our leather texture. And so just to kind of refresh our memories as to what that's supposed to look like, let's take a look at our sketch. You can see we have, if we turn off some of these other layers, so I'm just going to hold Alt and click that little eyeball, and I'll turn everything else off. And so you can see we have like this little texture here on the leather. And then our belt is also going to be leather. And then, you know, this little area right here, this could have a nice texture to it. We could smooth it out. I'm definitely going to add these little stitches in. And then maybe this will have some sort of little accent piece. And then for our boots, this little top part is, maybe that could be green, and then this will just be brown leather. But this will be, you know, like a textured green leather as well. So let's go ahead and turn back on our gear, our pants, our hair, and our skin, and our background. I'm going to turn off that sketch there. All right, so now that we have an idea of what we're doing, let's go ahead and let's grab our brush tool. I want to also make sure our gear is locked down, and let's get our brush, and we're going to start out this time with our super soft. And then for our color, maybe we'll choose this darker color of brown that we had chosen for our leather. But then our mode, though, is going to be multiply. And I'm going to take that color and just kind of go through and just add some shadow. Actually, I went a little crazy there. I forgot that this is on the same layer as that metal. So let's be a little bit more careful this time. I just backed up a little bit. So the first thing that I'll do is I'm just going to kind of go up underneath the leather, or up underneath that armor, and create that shadow that's underneath it, just to kind of show that these are our two pieces. About like that. And then we'll increase our brush size. Just being a little bit more careful now with that area. Maybe increase it a little bit more now. Something like that. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of shadow right there. And then we're going to come down underneath and just create like a lip, just using that shadow. Awesome. All right, now what we'll do is we're going to come through with some highlights. And so we'll grab our line tool. We're going to decrease our flow a little bit. And we're just going to sample our foreground color, or our leather color, but maybe let's bring that value up just a hair. And remember our sketch. And so we're just going to come through and add, actually let's change our mode to screen. And very lightly we'll create some little seams, or just some texture here. I'm going to come through, add just some lights, and then let's see here. We had another one that came down just like that. And then let's go ahead and let's swap off now. So I'm going to hit X, And we're going to choose our foreground color. We'll grab that dark color again. But this time we're going to choose multiply. We'll zoom in a little bit. And so our light is coming from back behind us, and so we'll go ahead and actually it would be, I'm going to Control Z that. We need to put that on this side. I'm going to go ahead and decrease my flow a little bit more. And we're just going to add just some little lines here. Just like that. And so just put them right on the side of our highlights that we made. And it's okay if you overlap just a little. So you can see it's kind of created like this illusion that we have a little bit of texture going on the leather. Let's take a look at our sketch. And so maybe we'll even add one more over here. And then let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and add just some little faint lines here. And we'll come back over here on this side. And just kind of come back and add some more lines. So I believe our bow is going to come right through here, so we won't be able to see a lot of this, but we'll know it's there. So then come back through with your little lines, and then we can swap over. So hit X to swap your foreground and background, and we're going to go back to our screen, and we're going to add just a little bit more. So very lightly, we'll go ahead and bring our brush size even down to maybe 5. Just very lightly, we'll add just a little bit of highlights here and there. Just to kind of trick your eye into thinking that this really is a texture that's coming through. Maybe even add just a little one right there, and then here on the corners we can kind of come through. Awesome. All right, so you kind of got the idea of what we're doing with the leather. And then I also want to point out how we're going to treat this belt. So the same idea will apply, but first let's go ahead and I'm just going to smear that in. I'm going to do that again. For some reason it's grabbing white and pulling that through. So just take and smear that belt. And so for the belt, we'll do the same thing. I'm going to get after we kind of have our lights and darks for the belt, what we're going to do is we're going to get our brush, and we're going to, first we'll do our multiply. I'm going to add like a seam or something right in here. Then hit X, and then go to your screen. We'll add just this little area right there, then hit X. We're going to add like we'll add like these little rivets or something like that to our belt. So maybe they had to get put together somehow, and so you will come through and add like a couple little rivets in there, something like that. And then looks like we need to blend some of that flesh in there. We'll go back to our screen. And we can add like just little hints there that, see how much of a difference that makes to adding just that little highlight. And then we'll spend more time like creating a buckle or something like that. Just use your imagination. Maybe it'll be something real special. And then we'll do the same. We'll add some stitching over here. So again, we'll blend this in really well. but then maybe we'd come through and we're going to add our stitches. You know, if you sat here and watched me do all this, I mean, this would be hours and hours. And so we'd come through and actually, let's go back to our screen. Just add your little highlights and things like that. And then what would be great is if you come through and actually added the little stitch work. And you can come through the same way that we did these little holes in here. Come through and add those little holes. And then maybe the same for this armband, but maybe we can think of something to add to kind of add to this little piece right here. But the thing I want to point out now is how to create some texture. So we're going to grab our brush. Let's choose maybe this little piece right here. And so it's really helpful to come over and take a look at all these different little brushes that we have at our disposal. And you can actually take one and do a lot with it. And so we're actually going to grab this little brush right here. Just make sure that there's nothing a little bit better. And so you can see that this right here, this little brush, it's actually it's kind of like a grainy type of airbrush. And so it's going to behave a little differently than, let's say, a brush that we use that has like a rag type of texture. And so let's take a look at our brush properties. What we want is to create some dynamics for this brush, some scattering that will allow us to have a little bit more control. So just take your spacing, increase it a little bit. Actually, let's go back to our size and increase that a little bit more. We'll increase our spacing. Let's go back to our scattering. Maybe we'll put that on both axes. Let's go to our shape. So for our angle, so maybe our count is up a little bit more. So you can see we're getting a little bit more splatter, I'd say. So all we did was just go to our shape diamond, our brush tip shape, increase the spacing a little bit, but we also have some more control here of the actual the granularity. So maybe we want to distort it a little bit. I'm going to keep the hardness down. Maybe we'll keep that, put it about 3 or so. So this is the amount, another amount here, the spatter amount that you can control. So what we're looking for is just a little bit of rough texture. So if I were to just take and nudge that down a little bit, I think it's looking really good. So if I were to come over here for our belt, let's say, and zoom in a little bit, you see what's happening here? It's just adding just a little bit of grain to that. Looks great. So we have it set to multiply and our flow is at about 25. It looks awesome. And then we can also add that same type of texture to our leather for our little waist. Man, it looks great. So you might create a little mask maybe to, if you're going to come up underneath here, create a little mask to keep you from putting that texture actually on, putting that texture on that metal. But then let's say we go back and we change the screen. So I'm going to actually decrease the brush size a little bit to maybe like 8 or 9. But let's say we just took that little texture. Do you see what's happening here? How we're able to get this awesome little texture ridge around just the bottom. Man, that looks awesome. So we can take that, even bring a little bit up front. And then maybe increase our brush size and just kind of sprinkle a little bit of that lighter texture through. Just like that. It looks great. So maybe if we even went to our belt we could add a little bit of texture to that. So you can see how we're able to create some really nice texture. Now let's do the same. So before our next lesson, I'm going to come through. I'm going to do the same with our boot, just using some of the same principles as the metal and as with the leather, and just kind of experiment with what you can do with a little bit of texture. And then after we're all finished, then we'll move on to our next lesson. So in our next lesson, we're actually going to start working on our bow. So have some fun and use some of these principles for our boots and